I followed Zane for 10 years. I tattooed his favorite gardenia on my collarbone. He finally agreed to marry me, but he was keeping an 18-year-old girl on the side. Before getting married, he indulged the girl's countdown to their breakup. He accompanied her bungee jumping, skiing, and went to Iceland to see the aurora borealis. But he doesn't know that I don't have much time left. I booked a ticket to go abroad, donated all his savings, and removed my tattoos. He counted down the days to the wedding, while I was planning my escape from him. The day I was diagnosed with stomach cancer, the young girl Zane had been keeping outside approached me on her own. I knew I was the mistress. The girl spoke with a sincerity that was truly frightening. She bit her lip. "Sister, I know you're getting married soon, but Zane no longer loves you." I followed him for a year. We slept together 78 times, 53 times in hotels, 21 times at my place. And 4 times at your house, in your bed. She looked straight at me and said, "If Zane still loves you, I wouldn't even exist." I found it amusing. I lit a cigarette and, through the smoke, looked at her. What else was there? I continued. Then she took out her phone and played a video for me. The angle of the video was subtle, as if it had been secretly filmed. The girl curled up in Zane's arms, crying. "Even if you have to marry her to take responsibility, can't you at least not abandon me?" Zane pushed her away, tossing out a bank card, looking for a reliable man. "Following me isn't a good thing either, it's too dangerous." "No," she wrapped her arms around his waist and pouted, "I'm not afraid of danger. Can you please not push me away?" "Zane, I won't become your burden, absolutely not." Zane was taken aback for a moment. His gaze swept across her face, lost in thought for a brief moment. Then he leaned in to kiss her. I stubbed out my cigarette. The little girl had just turned 18 this year, her face full of collagen, truly innocent. And the moment I saw her, I knew. She looked a lot like me. A lot like Tessa at 18. There's a saying that's true: if Zane still loved me, you wouldn't even exist. I got up, feeling a bit of pain in my abdomen, but I supported myself on the table and didn't show it. "But I advise you not to get too deep. Zane has never loved you, nor me. He only loves the Tessa from his memories. That pure, beautiful Tessa who has long since died on the path that accompanied him to his rise. In a few years, he will encounter new substitutes, and by then, you will only be worse off than I am." In fact, I lied to her. I'm about to die, how could she possibly be worse off than me? At most, she was just tired of Zane and got kicked to the curb. I followed Zane when I was 18. I grew up without parents, and my grandmother, who raised me, passed away when I was 15. That was when Zane appeared. He pursued me fiercely, throwing money around as if he wanted to bring the best of the world to me. Zane was handsome and gave me a strong sense of security. I quickly fell for him. On the day of my 19th birthday, he coaxed me into tasting the forbidden fruit for the first time. That night. From pain to surrender. I became completely one with him. The next day, Zane took me to meet that group of brothers. I had never been in such a situation before, nervously tugging at the hem of Zane's shirt, quietly following him as he called out to them. Their gazes were filled with mockery. "Zane, why did you bring a little girl? Too well behaved, it's easy to become a burden to you." At that time, I didn't understand what the burden they spoke of really meant. I couldn't help but quietly retort, "I won't. I won't become a burden to Zane. I definitely won't." But later, when I gradually came into contact with Zane's environment, I understood what kind of life he was living. It could be said that he was walking on the edge of a cliff. In order not to hold Zane back, and to be able to stand by his side, I could only force myself to adapt to that kind of environment. 10 years. I cut my hair short, dyed it, smoked, and got tattoos. I even ended up with countless scars on my body. Because I was ruthless enough, I climbed to the position of the second-in-command in the underground scene of Beijing with Zane. But Zane didn't seem happy. Countless nights. He held me in his arms, his fingers brushing over the scars on my body, then he leaned in and kissed them. Tessa. He buried his face in my chest and sighed, I still prefer the you from back then. And after I was momentarily stunned, I pushed him away and lit a cigarette. I laughed and scolded, Zane, you really have no conscience saying that. It was already past midnight when Zane came home. I lay in bed, not really asleep. I just stared into the darkness. Until I was pulled into his arms by Zane. Not asleep yet? He leaned down to kiss me, but his lips met nothing. He paused for a moment, suppressing his anger as he hugged me. Who bothered you? I'll go chop him up, okay? Zane. The room was so dark that I couldn't see his face. But I could smell the fragrance of gardenias clinging to him. Let's break up. Zane froze for a moment, then let go and turned to lie on his side. So what? He pressed his fingers against his forehead in annoyance. He wasn't a little girl anymore, so why act so pretentiously? What's the point of dividing hands? He laughed. Tessa, you're not young anymore. Who would take home a wife who smokes, drinks, has tattoos, and is tougher than any man? A sharp pain pierced my chest. I pressed hard against my heart, but I couldn't suppress that fine, persistent ache. Last year, when I had stitches in my arm, I was allergic to the anesthetic. 12 stitches, done without any numbing, and I gritted my teeth without making a sound. Zane's few heartfelt words, fueled by alcohol, made my eyes well up. Zane, I couldn't help but want to ask him, if I were to be diagnosed with a terminal illness, Tessa. He interrupted me, a hint of impatience between his brows, as if to say not to ask such boring questions anymore. If you really have a terminal illness, can I accompany you in suicide? He pressed his forehead, recently busy with the wedding and business. I don't have the energy to coax you, so stop it. As he spoke, his phone suddenly rang. Zane irritably hung up. The other party called again. After a few back and forths, Zane got out of bed with his phone in hand and said. The sound of a girl crying came through the receiver, not very clear. Zane cursed, what a damn hassle. He said it was a hassle, yet he hurried out the door. There's a problem with the business, I'll go take care of it. You should go to bed early, don't wait for me. My wedding with Zane is set for the 3rd of next month. The ceremony will be simple. I haven't told Zane about my illness. It's in the late stage, basically incurable. I never told Zane that I would never marry him. I can accept everything about Zane. The only thing I cannot accept is betrayal. Thinking of him holding other women in his arms, kissing their brows and eyes, searching for the shadow of my youth on their bodies, I feel a wave of nausea churn in my stomach. It's utterly disgusting. I followed Zane when I was 18, and now it's been a full 10 years. Now, the doctor says I have only half a year left to live. By this calculation, I've wasted nearly half my life on him. There are only a few days left. I just want to be Tessa. I booked a flight abroad, wanting to take the opportunity while I still have the strength to see this world that I love but have never seen. The flight is scheduled for the 3rd day of next month. Early in the morning, I crossed off a day on the calendar. There are still 10 days left until I go abroad. The sound of the door opening echoed behind me. Zane stepped in, wrapped in wind and snow, took off his coat, and came over to hug me. He still didn't like my short hair. As my gaze fell on the calendar, Zane looked at the heavily circled date of the 3rd of next month, chuckled, and gently pinched my face. Can't wait to marry me? He counted and said there were still 10 days left. He buried his face in my neck. In the next couple of days, I'll make time to help you dye your hair back to black, and then we can get it long again? You'll look beautiful at the wedding. No need. I stared expressionlessly at the calendar, it wouldn't be long now. Short hair is pretty good too. Zane was silent for a while, then said, He released his hand, picked up the coat draped over the chair, and said, There's a lot going on with the wedding. The third brother's place was just wrecked yesterday. I've been busy lately, so I won't be coming back for now. Zane stared at me as he spoke, as if waiting for me to give in. When I finally said, okay, go with me to dye my hair, and let's get my long hair back. But I just looked back at him indifferently. Go ahead. After all, there are only 10 days left. Zane said nothing, turned, and stepped into the night. He never looked back again. 7 days before the wedding, I went to a tattoo shop on the outskirts of the city. The owner, in her 30s, was well preserved but had eyes full of weariness. She glanced at me. What are you tattooing? I rolled up my sleeve, pointing at the SC on my wrist, and revealed the gardenia below my collarbone. It will all wash away. The landlady glanced at it. Washing it off will hurt a lot, and it will leave a scar. I smile, unafraid. The thing I fear the least right now is pain. As for scars, I have so many all over my body that these two don't make a difference. Moreover, who knows, in another 6 months, this body might just turn to a pile of ashes. The boss lady and I were chatting casually. Broke up? I laughed. Yeah, soon. In 7 days. The boss lady clicked her tongue. So ceremonial, a countdown for a breakup? Perhaps the shop was too quiet, or maybe it was a connection with the proprietress, but for some reason, when I saw her for the first time, I felt as if we were kindred spirits. I started talking to her about the past. At first, when Zane was pursuing me, I gave him a deadline. 300 days. If he could hold on until then, I would be with him. So, every morning Zane appeared in front of me, counting the days. 179 days left. Tessa, in 96 days, you will be my girlfriend. 1 day left, future girlfriend. The boy who, despite wind and rain, persistently pursued me for 300 days at the beginning. Yet over the next 10 years, I gradually grew tired of him. I got along well with the boss lady, and when I was getting my tattoos removed, I mentioned the meaning of those two places. The SC on my wrist is something I got tattooed when Zane and I had been together for a year. At that time, I was kidnapped by his enemies to threaten him. Zane went alone to the meeting to save me. Knowing it was a trap, he went without hesitation. That time, he nearly got killed. When he was discharged from the hospital, I went to a tattoo shop and got his initials tattooed on my wrist. At that time, I naively thought I would be devoted to Zane for this lifetime. But that night, when I presented my still red wrist to Zane like a treasure, he was taken aback. There was no emotion as I had imagined. He frowned, first asking me why, then asking if it hurt. In the end, he held me in his arms and said, "Don't do that anymore, I don't like it. I don't like you hurting yourself. You're just fine the way you are, no need to change. I really like a clean and flawless Tessa." At that time I was young and thought he was just feeling sorry for me. Little did I know, Zane had already spoken his true feelings. The gardenia on my chest was tattooed when Zane swore that he would marry me when he turned 28. Zane loves gardenias the most, adoring their pure, flawless white. So I had it tattooed on my chest, waiting for Zane to marry me. Today, Zane has finally set a wedding date in my 28th year, and he is planning the wedding for 7 days from now. Meanwhile, I am planning how to leave him. Although this body is already in a state of decay, I still don't want to leave with any marks related to him. I pointed to the area below the collarbone on the other side and told the landlady, "Tattoo a bellflower here. Zane loves gardenias. But I prefer trumpet vines. He wants me to be pure and flawless. Yet in the remaining days of my life, I choose to be the proud trumpet vine that grows against the high walls." After leaving the tattoo shop, it was already evening. The shop owner and I hit it off quite well, exchanged contact information, and added each other on WeChat. On my way home, I passed by a small stall selling cotton candy. I couldn't help but stop. The last time I ate it seems to have been when I was a child, back when my grandmother was still alive. She would take out all the change she had to buy it for me when I was so tempted by the cotton candy that I could hardly walk. She always watched me finish it, and in the end, she would laugh and scold me, calling me a greedy little girl. Grandma always liked to see me smile. The smile on that aged face, the wrinkles becoming ever more profound. The cold wind brushed by, scattering memories. I walked up to the stall and bought a cotton candy shaped like a rabbit. It was very sweet. Just as sweet and cloying as I remembered. Passing by the street corner, I heard a little girl asking loudly, "Mom, look, that lady is so cool. But why is she eating cotton candy? Isn't that something for kids?" Her mom smiled and explained, "Who says cotton candy is only for kids? Everyone can enjoy it. Eating a little sweet treat makes people happier." I walked by in high heels. I heard the tender voice of a little girl again, "But why does the aunt, having eaten such sweet cotton candy, seem not happy at all?" "Mom, the aunt looks so lonely." The voice faded away. On the way home, the cotton candy was all gone, leaving only sticky hands. I went in and washed my hands. Then I received a call from Zane. He sounded like he was drunk. "Tessa. You said." He chuckled on the other end of the line, "In 7 days, you will marry me. Tomorrow, I'll take you to pick out a wedding dress? Just decide, you know my size." Zane fell silent for a moment. I vaguely heard a girl's playful voice on the other end of the phone, "Zane, let me go with you to try on wedding dresses. Don't you want to see what I look like in a wedding dress?" After a long while. Zane's voice was hoarse, "Good." I just didn't know if he was responding to me or to the girl beside him. I woke up. I heavily crossed out yesterday's date on the calendar. There are 6 days left. Today, I'm going to a concert. I changed my clothes, washed up, and put on makeup. My body feels a bit unwell, aching everywhere, but I can still manage. In the dressing mirror, the woman wore the short skirt that Zane hated the most, revealing her slender limbs, her smile calm, finally able to reconcile with the ugly scars of various sizes on her body. Below her right collarbone, a clematis bloomed. The concert drew a crowd of thousands. I followed the throng, singing passionately, my proud destruction, my hated ordinariness. Only then did I remember those were my greatest loves. Perhaps I was too immersed. When a song ended, I only then became aware of the pain within me. I pressed against my seat, forcing myself to hold on. Suddenly, a box of milk was handed to me. My stomach was in agony, like being cut by a knife. I looked up and saw a young and unfamiliar face. The boy, wearing a creamy white down jacket, smiled at me and asked, "Does your stomach hurt? The milk is warm, I can give it to you." I took it, the warmth in my palm dispelling some of the chill. "Thank you." Just as there was a pause between songs, the boy shook his head and said, "It's nothing. My girlfriend really likes helping others. If she knew I gave you the milk, she would be very happy." I glanced at the empty seat next to him. Did she have something to do and couldn't come to the concert? The boy smiled, but in his eyes, a snowstorm fell in an instant. "She has passed away. I am here to attend this concert in her place." The milk just swallowed felt like a fishbone stuck in my throat. "Sorry. It's nothing." The music started again, and everyone eagerly looked towards the stage. The lucky audience member was about to be drawn. A row of audience faces flashed rapidly across the big screen. At the moment the screen paused, I unexpectedly saw my own reflection. The camera seemed to treat me and the boy as a couple, and people around us were shouting for us to kiss. The boy quickly took out a photo from his pocket and held it up to the camera with force. That was his girl. The microphone was shoved into my hand, and for a moment, I was at a loss for words. In the end, I could only watch the singer I had liked for many years on stage and softly said, "I hope more and more people see you and like you. I hope you all continue to thrive. I don't really know what else to say, so I wish everyone here a long life." People around me were laughing, perhaps not understanding why my wishes felt so ordinary and empty. The camera quickly cut away. At the moment the next song's melody began to play, I saw the boy beside me gently tracing the outline of the girl in the photo. With red eyes, he whispered softly, "May my every year also live a long life." At that moment, I don't know why, I suddenly felt like crying too. The concert ended. I forced myself to go home. I forgot to close the window in the morning, and the room was freezing cold. I closed the window, took off my makeup, and threw myself onto the bed. I casually scrolled through a short video platform and was pushed a new video featuring someone I might know. The person's ID was Serena. In the video, a young girl donned a pure white wedding dress, and the man's face she was holding was pixelated. Her gaze was innocent, yet it concealed a fierce ambition. Countdown 6 days, my boyfriend is going to marry someone else. Just a few more days to have you back, how I wish this moment could last forever. In the frame, Zane gently wraps his arm around the girl's waist. The movement is tender. 5 days to go. I feel pretty good today. I got up early and did something significant. I donated all of Zane's assets that he had with me, every last cent. An 8-figure sum, not a penny left. Zane betrayed me emotionally, but in life, he held nothing back. Over the years, almost all the money he earned was transferred to me, leaving himself only some daily expenses. In the end, I left Zane's name. After all, it was his money being donated, so it could be considered a way to accumulate some good karma for him. As for my savings, I donated half and kept the other half for myself. It is an incredibly painful thing to face the end of life. Therefore, I must ensure I have a way out, so I won't have to endure even more suffering. After all, I may not be dead yet, but I could run out of money first. However, just as I stepped out of the charity's door, I suddenly lost consciousness, without any warning. When I woke up, I was already lying in a hospital bed. The nurse said they had called my emergency contacts many times using my phone, but no one answered. I only had one emergency contact, and that was Zane. I'm sorry, I'll go downstairs to pay later. The doctor, with a serious expression, advised me to be hospitalized, saying that if I didn't accept treatment soon, I might not last 6 months. I smiled and asked him, what about treatment? I can't guarantee how the illness will progress, but I can assure you that as long as there is a glimmer of hope, we will do our best to treat it. In fact, even with treatment, the hope is slim. Thank you, doctor. Please help me with the discharge process. Just as I left the office, Zane's call came in. I was just busy and didn't hear. What's wrong? I looked at the familiar figure at the other end of the corridor. It's nothing, I lost my phone, and a kind passerby helped me call my emergency contact. It's good that it's nothing. The wedding is coming up soon, do you need anything? No. Another silence fell. From the other side came Serena's displeased whine, hurry up, the ice cream is melting. Zane spoke up, call me anytime if you need anything. The call ended, and I frowned as I looked at a familiar face not far away. The owner of the tattoo shop. She was bending down to pick up the wig that had been knocked off by a passing child. When she looked up, our eyes met. It's you? She clearly recognized me as well. She adjusted her crooked wig and said, I didn't mention it last time, but we're pretty much the same, both short-lived. That day, I originally planned to close the shop, she smiled, you are the last customer of my career. What illness? Leukemia. She smiled nonchalantly, there's no cure. We walked out of the hospital side by side. I took out a cigarette and shared one with her, struggling to light them for each other in the cold wind. We exchanged a glance. Suddenly, we laughed. We were really two unlucky souls. We laughed, watching the smoke disperse in the wind, just like the ending that was about to come for us. I changed my flight ticket. I will no longer go abroad. I booked a ticket to Yunnan with Yara. My body can no longer endure the journey across the Atlantic. Perhaps it is destined that I will never see that ocean view in this lifetime. The two of us, both short-lived souls, hit it off immediately, both wanting to see Arai Lake. Last night, Serena posted a new video. Countdown 5 days, thank you for enduring your fear and accompanying me bungee jumping. I love you too. In the video, Zane and she were tied with safety ropes, standing on a platform 100 meters high, embracing each other as they leaped down. Because of his fear of heights, his body was slightly stiff. Yet, at the moment of the jump, he shouted loudly, "I love you, Serena." However, if you listen closely, the last two syllables are not pronounced as Serena. They are Tessa. There are 4 days left until the wedding. Yara asked me if there was anything else I wanted to do, and after thinking for a moment, I asked her to accompany me to meet someone. On the way, Yara asked me, "Is she your friend?" I shook my head, quite the opposite, she is more like my arch-nemesis. Yara raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask further. She even accompanied me to the flower shop to order a bouquet. Jade is the fiercest woman on several streets in the East District. She runs 7 or 8 bars, being tough on others and just as tough on herself. We have been in a subtle rivalry for years, and neither of us has gained any advantage. As soon as I entered the bar with Yara, I was stopped. "Tessa?" Someone called her out, and she frowned at me, asking what I was doing here again. "To scold you, old woman." Her expression changed instantly. Then she started cursing at me. I spent half an hour just cursing back with her. I felt quite pleased. I casually grabbed the drink beside me and took a sip, but when I tried to take a second sip, Yara stopped me. "Just a taste is enough." I had no choice but to give up. I waved at Jade. "All right, I'm leaving. You should fight and kill less in the future and settle down earlier. Otherwise, where will you find the energy to look for your brother later?" I have already walked out of the bar, and I can still hear Jade in shock asking the person next to her, "What the hell is she here for? Just to scold me for half an hour? No, she must be crazy, right?" I turned around and happened to see her kick the little brother beside her. Didn't I just scold him for losing? I didn't perform well just now. I chuckled and walked out. Perhaps it was because of the impending death, but after all these years, I found my longtime rival surprisingly endearing. On the way home, my phone suddenly vibrated. "Jade sent me a bouquet of roses, the ones you gave me?" The other party was silent for nearly 2 minutes, then messages started coming in one after another. "Jade, what do you mean by sending me flowers? Only little girls like fresh flowers, I wouldn't care for these. You're not hiding explosives in the flowers, are you? Tessa, don't think that sending a bouquet will ease our relationship. This isn't the first time I've received flowers in my life. They're actually quite pretty. Thanks. Let's have dinner together next time." I looked at my phone, smiled, and slowly typed back to her, "Yeah, if there's a chance." In the evening, Serena updated her video again. "There are only 4 days left, and I can't bear it. Skiing together, I really like the way you protect me, it's very much like my dad." In the video, Serena falls into the snow, and someone slides down from above. Zane rushes over and shields her with his body. A few days later, the video had gained some popularity, and many people were eagerly awaiting updates. Why do lovers have to part? The boy's body language clearly shows that he loves her. Why does he have to marry someone else? Is he being forced by his family? God, it feels like the girl has been holding back her tears all along. No, don't you all think about it when you ship CP? They're about to get married, yet they're still playing the breakup countdown with the ex-girlfriend. Scumbag and cheap girl, just lock it down and don't go harm the bride. The comments section is full of controversy. But more than that, there were the onlookers waiting to see how things would end for them 4 days later. I had no patience to watch their lingering moments, so I scrolled past the video. I casually liked the next clip of my brother twisting the waist of a male dog. Only 3 days left. I treated my brothers to a meal. Everyone was puzzled, thinking it was just my last night as a single man before the wedding. Bottles of wine emptied one after another, and the atmosphere grew increasingly lively. Everyone was chatting about these years. Someone brought up Zane and me. "In fact, my second brother loves you very much, really." The speaker, so thin he was almost unrecognizable, was nicknamed Little Kuei. Once, my second brother got drunk and cried for a long time, saying he hated himself for not protecting you well. He said that sometimes he didn't even dare to go home because he was afraid to see you, afraid that it would remind him that it was he who had caused you to end up like this. He sighed, but I thought for a long time and I still should tell you. Tessa, Zane has been raising a little girl outside, Someone next to him kicked him. Damn, how much have you had to drink? Sister-in-law, Xiao Kuei has had too much to drink, I'll take him back first, you all keep drinking. Xiao Kuei was taken away by someone. No one believed his words, they all thought he was just rambling from being drunk. The table was abuzz with chatter, all discussing how much Zane loved me. Some even took advantage of the alcohol to call Zane. What's up? Speak. Zane's voice was loud, short, and strong, but the tone at the end slightly rose. I felt a tremor in my brow. I knew all too well that it was the tone Zane had just used after releasing his desires. Tessa invited us to dinner, everyone hasn't seen you in a long time. The crowd started to cheer. Zane, are you busy right now? Come over and have a drink with us. Zane fell silent for 2 seconds. I have something to take care of over here, you all drink. Take good care of Tessa. For God's sake, drink less, and when it's time to leave, find 2 brothers to safely take Tessa home, got it? After the call ended, the brothers couldn't help but sigh. Tessa, look how much Zane cares about you. We're just a bunch of single dogs eating dog food every day. I didn't say anything. I took a sip of juice. The juice was at room temperature, but I still felt a dull pain in my abdomen after swallowing it. I didn't bring any painkillers. If it became unbearable, I would go outside for some fresh air. It was only when I stepped out that I realized it was snowing. Leaning against the street lamp, I inexplicably opened Serena's short video. Perhaps having just listened to too much Zane, at that moment, I suddenly felt an urgent desire to know what they were doing. 5 minutes ago, Serena had just updated the video. He and she stood side by side, the aurora dazzling above them. It's 3 days until the breakup countdown. To fulfill my wish, he took me on a night flight to Iceland to see the northern lights. The aurora was beautiful, but it couldn't compare to him. But what can I do? He won't belong to me soon. Forget it, heavens, don't mind me, just let him be happy for now. I'm okay. In just 5 minutes, the video has nearly 1,000 likes and is still on the rise. I'm dying, oh heavens, don't mind me, just let them be happy first. For the first time I really hate the main wife. Wait, isn't the bride the one who saved his whole family? Speechless, a pair of goods, and there's a group of love-struck minds in the comments. Family and friends have already bought the resurrection armor, the front and back are broken, the urine is matte, there are no mirrors at home, and if you scold me, remember to show the death certificate of my parents first. I stared blankly at the aurora in the video, dazzlingly beautiful. Suddenly, I remembered when I was 19, snuggled in Zane's arms, watching TV with envy. Zane, when you make money in the future, will you take me to see the aurora? Sure. I will definitely go with you then. Snow fell on my eyelashes, blurring my vision. I blinked, and the snowflakes melted. But the girl holding his hand, watching the aurora, was not the 19-year-old Tessa. The day before the wedding. Early in the morning, I received a call from Zane. Tomorrow is the wedding, and his tone was slightly weary. Is he nervous? Recently, there have been many things happening. Have you thought of me? It's okay. Another silence followed, and Zane said softly, knowing that you've been upset lately. Tomorrow, at the wedding, I'll give you a surprise, okay? The call ended, and I stepped out, hailing a taxi straight to the cemetery. My dad, my mom, and my grandmother all rest there. Soon enough, it will be my final resting place as well. Thinking about it this way, if death allows me to reunite with my loved ones in the underworld, then death doesn't seem so terrifying after all. Even so, it makes me a bit expectant. If my grandmother saw me, she would definitely raise her hands and chase after me to scold me for being disobedient, wondering why I came down so early to keep her company. But she wouldn't really want to hit me. she would only symbolically pat my shoulder and then hug me, asking, "Is our Tessa baby feeling wronged over there? It must hurt to be sick, right? Where does it hurt? Grandma will rub it for you, Tessa darling. Tessa darling isn't afraid, Grandma will take you home." I brought Grandma's favorite drink, bamboo leaf green. I poured a cup in front of the tombstone. "Is the old lady lonely down there? Is your son taking good care of you? Wait a little longer for me. Our family will soon be reunited." Chattering in front of the grave for a long time. I stood up, rubbed my sore and numb legs, and prepared to leave. After a moment's thought, I turned back. "That's enough, no need to bless Zane anymore. He's a jerk and didn't take care of me. I'm leaving now." I brushed the dust off the tombstone. "See you later, old lady." I bought a lot of cat food. I went to see a stray cat that I had been feeding for a long time. Meow. I looked at the little cat rubbing against my pant leg in surprise. It was aloof and usually ignored people. However, I didn't know if it sensed the impending separation, but for the first time, it took the initiative to get close to me. It gently rubbed against my hand. As if to say, "Can you not go? Eat more." I rubbed its head, thinking I probably won't see it again. This cat food will last you a long, long time. This little cat had once been adopted, that family treated it well, but after a few days, it ran away again, choosing to be a stray. It was unwilling to be confined. Before leaving, I lit a cigarette and looked down at it. "Goodbye, little cat. I wish you freedom always." On the way home, I heard someone call me, "Tessa." I recognized the person at a glance, young Lynn. It was an old classmate I hadn't seen in many years. Back in school, the whole class knew he had a crush on me, but he never confessed, and I pretended not to know, both of us understanding without saying a word. "Do you still remember me?" He looked very happy. I brushed my short hair back, "And you haven't changed much. But you can still recognize me." Of course, he looked at me, his eyes so bright, just like when we were in school, not a bit changed. How could that be? The smile couldn't help but turn bitter. Sometimes I look at myself and feel like a stranger. Accompanying Zane on his rise to power has been difficult. Over the years, I have had to force myself to gradually blend in with them. Until I became unrecognizable. Young Lin seemed to have not changed. When he smiled, it was still sincere and warm, a man in his 30s who surprisingly still carried a rare sense of youthfulness. He looked at me seriously. How could he not recognize me? To recognize someone, you need to look into their eyes, not at their clothes. "Tessa, you haven't changed, you've just got a new hairstyle, and it suits you well." Just 2 short sentences. Yet I stood frozen in place. "I haven't changed, I've just got a new hairstyle." "Thank you." At parting, he said, "See you later." I replied, "Sure." In truth, I was deceiving him. It would be best not to meet you again. By the next time we meet, I might have turned into a female ghost, which isn't very auspicious. The luggage had long been packed. The cheap gifts Zane gave me were thrown away, and the expensive ones were sold cheaply on second-hand platforms. Without the bond, those gifts were worthless to me. I don't have many belongings. In fact, I didn't even fill a suitcase. The rest I burned. After all, when a person dies, old things must be burned, whether it's done early or late, it has to be done. As the sky darkened, I dragged my suitcase and left the house I once considered home without looking back. That night, Zane was staying at the hotel where he would pick up his bride tomorrow, and he sent me a message in the middle of the night. "See you tomorrow. After all these years, I finally get to marry you." I didn't reply. At this moment, I was already sitting in the airport waiting hall, with Yara. I also came across Serena's last video. The male protagonist, Zane, finally made his appearance. He helped her plant a tree with her own hands and wrote a wish bottle with her. The paper inside the bottle carried their wishes. The camera zoomed in. What he wrote was, "Little girl, may you live a worry-free life." Serena wrote, "I hope Zane and I won't break up. After chasing for so long, it really feels like a bad ending," and I cried my heart out. Is it really, really impossible for us to be together? That bride, who doesn't even know who she is, if you still have a bit of conscience, just give up, can't you let them be happy? How can I still see it after blocking everyone? I exited the video. I took out the SIM card and threw it in the trash. Meanwhile, the announcement for the flight reminded us. Yara and I walked side by side toward the boarding gate. I didn't look back. Yunnan is a very beautiful place. Yara and I helped each other as we climbed Yulong Snow Mountain. In fact, we only climbed less than half. Two sickly people, managing to climb half was already pushing our limits. But we still saw some stunning scenery. We went to eat mushroom hot pot. It was very delicious. But I took 2 bites and threw it all up, such a waste. Yara ate a lot, she said she would eat more for me. We also went to ride elephants. We went to see Irai Lake. Irai is beautiful, so beautiful that Yara and I even impulsively wanted to jump into the lake together to end our lives. But before we could carry out the plan, a kind-hearted aunt nearby stopped us. "What is going on here?" Auntie spoke in a genuine Northeast dialect, hurriedly stopping us. "With 2 pretty girls like you, what obstacles can't you overcome? Listen to Auntie's advice and live well. Living is the most important thing, everything else is just nonsense. Auntie has some candy, it's really sweet. Be good, eat the candy and feel happier, but don't think too negatively anymore. If your parents find out, they'll be so heartbroken." The aunt was very warm-hearted. Yara and I obediently ate the candy, repeatedly assuring her that we wouldn't think of anything irrational again, before she left, turning back to look at us 3 times. The sugar is very sweet. So sweet that we suddenly lost the courage to commit suicide. We decided to listen to our aunt. Let's live well. Every extra day is a gain. No loss. I heard that on the day of the wedding, Zane was going crazy. There were piles of messages on WeChat, but I hadn't read a single one. Except for Jade's. She sent me a video of the wedding. Zane on stage was impeccably dressed in a suit, his expression rarely gentle. However, when the banquet hall doors opened, the bride was nowhere to be seen. His smile froze awkwardly. Jade's lens focused on his face, capturing all his astonishment, panic, and fear. "What about Tessa?" He shouted on stage, "Where is she? Bring her back to me." He almost mobilized all the brothers to look for me. But there was nothing to be found. Someone bravely asked him, "Brother Zane, is it true that your video with that girl was seen by your sister-in-law?" He froze for a moment. "What video? Aren't all videos censored?" Someone dug up the last video of Serena and handed it to him. "We also came across it yesterday. The earlier videos were blurred, but yesterday's wasn't." Zane snatched the phone, his face turning pale. Damn. The phone was smashed to pieces. The video ended, and Jade immediately sent a message, "Wow, you really did something big without a word. Where are you? Tell me the truth, are you seriously not dying of some terminal illness?" I didn't reply to her. This person really knows how to guess. Jade is actually a very smart woman. She probably figured something out, and regardless of whether I would respond, she sent me a bunch of videos. The guests dispersed. Zane, with red eyes, smashed the banquet hall. The screen shattered. The table was overturned. The man went mad until he was exhausted, finally squatting at the edge of the stage, his head hanging down. It was as if he were crying. In the video, Jade's voice is completely unreserved. "I used to think your taste in men was pretty good. But now looking back. Tessa, he really is an ex you can never show off in your life." Yara and I rented a house by Irai Lake. We also found a live-in auntie who is responsible for cleaning and preparing 3 meals a day. The aunt is a local, a bit plump, but very kind and extremely efficient in her work. She always nags that both of us are too thin, which makes people feel sorry for us, and then every day she puts a lot of effort into researching recipes to cook for us. Today she made dompa pork. Tomorrow she plans to learn how to make snow silk red bean paste. In fact, I can hardly eat anything anymore. But I can't bear to hurt the aunt's feelings, so each time I still force myself to eat a couple of bites. Then I go to the bathroom and vomit for a long time. The woman in the mirror is becoming increasingly gaunt, her cheeks slightly sunken, which makes her eyes appear very large. Yara, I called her over, look, don't I have a beautiful bony figure now? She stood beside me, equally thin. She laughed, I'm about the same, we look like a pair of skeletons. I came across Zane's short video. He has always hated showing his face. This time, however, he carefully looked at the camera. Tessa, if you can see this video, please don't scroll away, okay? The man looked haggard, with unshaven stubble, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was no longer the spirited person he used to be. Where are you? Can I come over to find you? I have only two things I regret the most in this life. One is that I found a girl who looks a lot like you and indulged in desire. I never loved her. Every minute I spent with her, I treated her as if she were you at 18. Another thing. I shouldn't have dragged you into this back then. His eyes were red, and he struggled to hold back, but his voice still trembled. All these years, I've hated myself for not being able to protect you. I really didn't want to hear any more, so I swiped away the video. Yara felt nauseous listening from the side, repeatedly confirming with me, you won't soften and forgive him, right? Of course not. I casually scrolled through the video, unless he followed me to death. I was lying to her. Even if Zane followed me to death, I still wouldn't forgive him. He was too filthy. Zane's video went viral. He and Serena quickly became trending topics, synonymous with scumbag and slut. I thought it was a forced marriage by a wealthy and powerful bride that led to this breakup countdown, but it turns out these two worthless people ended up together. What do the 10 years the bride invested mean? What do the tears I shed during those days mean? When you stoop to being a mistress to this extent, and then get sentimental about the situation, you've really crossed a line. The girl was my classmate in middle school. She always put on an innocent face while secretly stealing other people's boyfriends and bullying female classmates, utterly despicable. Haha, the annoying couple finally got their comeuppance. Feels good that no one is scolding me this time, right? Soon, Serena's background was thoroughly exposed. The events from her school days were being discussed heatedly in the comments section, with former classmates continuously coming forward to tear her apart. Photos of Serena and Zane have been turned into various memes. Each meme is filled with vulgar insults. It even spawned a new catchphrase, "Don't be too Serena." Compared to Zane's power, she was just a girl without any background, and her address was easily uncovered. Enthusiastic netizens nearby began to block her door every day. She lived on the first floor. Every night, her windows would be smashed. Whenever she stepped outside, people would curse her as a mistress, a slut. Someone threw rotten eggs into her house and splashed paint on her door. Her entire family had become a laughingstock. I heard that Serena has depression, locking herself in her room every day, repeatedly looking at the negative comments online, often breaking down in tears and then screaming while throwing things. Zane dumped her. Because of that video that went viral, it was said that he even hit her, and it wasn't gentle. The young girl was carried home by someone. It spread online. Later, Serena completely lost her mind, crying and laughing in her room every day, holding a huge teddy bear named Zane. 2 months later. Sent to a mental hospital by her parents. Someone captured footage at the entrance of the hospital. In the video, Serena no longer resembled her past innocent self, her hair disheveled, acting erratically. She was so thin, she looked almost unrecognizable, her face filled with fear as she looked at everyone. Netizens were very satisfied with this outcome. It served her right, she deserved it. Sitting and waiting for the scumbag's ending, why should the man disappear? I heard the scumbag is living it up, so I wish him to be hacked to death by a mob. I might indeed be an unlucky one. The doctor said I could live for another 6 months. However, just 2 months later, my body suddenly collapsed. The day after I rode the elephant with Yara, I couldn't get out of bed. We had clearly agreed not to seek treatment anymore. But Yara, with red eyes, still took me to the hospital. She was panicking. I spent some time in the emergency room. When I came out, I saw Yara with her eyes all red. She scolded me, "You scared me to death," trembling as she reached for a cigarette, only to realize it was a hospital and stopped herself. In the hospital room, we stared at each other for a while and then laughed. How complex humans are. Two women who thought themselves carefree, ready to face death with a smile, yet when death truly arrived, they hesitated. No one can truly be carefree. Yet, we cannot resist fate. Yara touched the trumpet flower at my collarbone, clearly smiling, yet tears kept falling. "This is my last piece. You're taking it away so soon, you bastard." "All right," she smiled, "the one who leaves first doesn't have to worry. Rest assured, I will bring your ashes back and bury them behind Grandma's grave." Yara tucked my loose hair behind my ear. "Let you two reunite, okay? And, you wait for me down there, let's be born together again." From Yara's perspective, Tessa is dead. She died in the spring-like city of Kunming. She always said I was a very carefree person. I didn't cry when Tessa died. But when I watched her being pushed into the cremation furnace, and saw the flames engulfing her in that moment, I suddenly broke down. That was Tessa. A perfectly fine person, who just the day before had been smiling and coaxing me to take my medicine, was pushed into the flames just like that after a single day. When she came out again, she had turned into a handful of ashes, packed into such a small box. The housekeeper cried very sadly. She kept murmuring that if she had known she was sick, she would have made her something light to eat. Should she have made her more soup? A couple of mornings ago, she was wearing too little, and when I urged her to put on a coat, my voice was a bit loud. Do you think that girl felt I was scolding her? The aunt choked up. She is only 28, 1 year younger than my daughter. I held Tessa's urn, my eyes red. She always felt that she hadn't grown up as pure as her grandmother had hoped. She didn't understand. What a good person she was. It was enough to make a housekeeper, who she had only known for 2 months, cry to the point of choking up. On the flight back home, I looked out at the ethereal clouds and whispered, "Tessa, we are going home." I buried her in the cemetery behind her grandmother's house. Her grandmother is watching over her. The memorial photo was taken in advance. The girl has short hair, her eyes clear, smiling brightly at the camera. I placed flowers in front of her tombstone. I whispered to her, "You must be the most beautiful ghost in this cemetery." I swept the ashes in front of Grandma's grave again and poured out some wine. "Grandma, I brought Tessa to you. Please don't blame her for coming down to be with you so early, she found it too hard to bear. In her final days, she was in so much pain. She no longer has to endure the suffering and can finally take painkillers freely." As I left, a light rain fell from the sky. I walked out of the cemetery with an umbrella, only to encounter a man coming towards me. A man I had never seen in person, but whose name I had heard countless times. Zane. I was taken aback for a moment, pretending not to recognize him as I tried to leave. But he stopped me. He stared at me intently, his voice hoarse, "I've seen your photo, you're Yara. I checked the flight information, you went to Yunnan with Tessa. I searched for many days over there, but I couldn't find Tessa." He seemed to realize something, his body suddenly trembling, and he looked up at the cemetery behind me. "What are you doing here?" I looked into his eyes and said word by word, "To see Tessa off on her final journey." "What?" He stumbled back a step, his eyes instantly reddening. "Tessa is dead. She died in my arms." Zane stood frozen in place, the man rumored to have a violent temper, now shedding tears. "Where is she?" "Tessa doesn't want to see you. If you want to cry, go cry far away. don't disturb her reunion with Grandma. I didn't hide Tessa's death. Because he will definitely find out. Tessa's gravestone is right behind Grandma's. As long as he visits Grandma, he will surely see it. But I have to tell him. I asked Tessa if she would forgive you. Zane's eyelashes fluttered, his face ashen as he waited for my answer. He understood Tessa so well. He could have guessed her answer long ago. I said, Tessa said, unless you go die. Before she died, she washed away your name from her wrist, washed away the gardenia on her chest. She hated gardenias the most, and on the other side, she got a tattoo of the trumpet vine she liked. She threw away all the gifts you gave her, donated your money, and burned all her belongings. Do you know why? I spoke slowly, watching the dead silence in Zane's eyes, feeling inexplicably pleased. Because she no longer wanted anything to do with you. You were too dirty, making her feel disgusted. In fact, Tessa had long seen the video of Serena. Every day you spent counting down to your breakup with the mistress, Tessa knew. Did you think the countdown dates on the calendar were her eagerly anticipating and counting down the days to your wedding? I suddenly burst into laughter. Zane's eyes drooped, and his eyelids suddenly began to twitch violently. I continued, she never even considered marrying you. The countdown on the calendar is her way of counting down the days until she leaves you. What makes you think she still wants to marry you, when you're a man who's rotted to the core? The man hung his head, his shoulders completely slumped. He choked out, I've always blamed myself for turning Tessa into what she is now. I know she did it for me. That kind of environment doesn't allow for someone too innocent. The brothers wouldn't associate with a sister-in-law who was naive and unaware of the world. She was never a burden, it was me who dragged her down. With Serena, I've always treated her like Tessa. I indulged her, just wanting to make up for Tessa from back then in some way. I couldn't listen any longer and sneered, enough, who are you disgusting? Tessa wasn't dead when you cheated. Feeling guilty but not making it up to Tessa, instead looking for a substitute to make amends? That's really fucking funny. Tessa is the one who suffered, and now you're just replacing her for your atonement, right? Zane was silent, choked with emotion. In my life, I have only ever loved Tessa. His voice trembled. Those few days I indulged Serena were merely an attempt to say goodbye to the past, to the Tessa of the past. After getting married, I would devote myself to her, making up for her. I even underwent a sterilization procedure. Tessa had shielded me from harm in the past 2 years, getting hurt and damaging her uterus. The doctor said it would be difficult for her to conceive. He laughed self-deprecatingly, and I had the surgery, wanting to tell her after the wedding that I could live my whole life without children, as long as I had her. I cursed, feeling disgusted. Thinking about it, I laughed again. You actually did something human, you lost Tessa and have no descendants left. Quite good. I stood in the rain, smiling as I watched his retribution. I heard you've basically lost everything? TSK, a broken family and friends turning against you, how tragic. By the way, Tessa asked me to tell you that those opportunities taken by Jade were all ones she secretly helped with while she was alive. She knew all your weaknesses. Tessa was just soft-hearted, she couldn't bear to see her brothers, whom she had followed for many years, fall into hardship. So she made an agreement with Jade to leave a way out for each brother, believing that they would only thrive better by following Jade. I started to laugh. Look, Tessa had thought of an escape route for everyone, even for the stray cats she often fed. Before she left, she slipped some money to the nearby shops to help take care of them. The only exception was you. You know how much she hated you, right? The rain grew heavier, soaking him completely. I left, holding an umbrella. I didn't take a taxi, walking along the road outside the cemetery. My mind is in chaos, recalling many memories from the past. There are moments with Tessa, and even further back, Tessa always said I was carefree, but in truth, I was particularly dependent on someone once. But I was let down. Later, I gradually came to terms with it. Tessa is a bit happier than I am, she still has her loving grandmother, but I have no family. I have been an orphan since childhood, growing up on the kindness of strangers. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a car speeding by. A black Land Rover cut through the rain curtain and crashed heavily into the roadside fence. A loud bang. That license plate ending in 999, I remember Tessa mentioning it. It was Zane's car. I held the umbrella, coldly watching the flames shooting up over there. Unfortunately, a passing vehicle had called for an ambulance. A kind passerby driver dragged Zane out of the car. I didn't look again and hailed a passing taxi to leave. Because I know. No matter how severe the injuries are, Zane will never survive this life. Zane was indeed not dead. But living was worse than death. The person he loved most refused to see him even at the end. His brothers hated him for being heartless, for causing Tessa's death, and left him to follow Jade. The venue was gone, and all the money had been donated. The accident didn't take his life. But it took his legs. Zane became a true invalid. He even lost the courage to commit suicide. I guess it's because I have no face to go down and see Tessa. One time while visiting Tessa's grave, I saw him in the cemetery. He was wearing a long cotton coat that covered his legs, sitting stiffly in a wheelchair, staring blankly at Tessa's tombstone from a distance. In the wind and snow, he resembled a rigid statue. He looked for a long, long time. Until I left, he didn't dare to take a step closer. However, this should be the last time I come to visit Tessa's grave. Since her burial, my health has been deteriorating as well. But without Tessa, there's no one to coax me into taking my medicine. Sometimes, I wake up in pain in the middle of the night. I take a handful of painkillers over and over again. Finally. On a snowy day, my life reached its final moment. I lay on the hospital bed, my gaze fixed outside the window. Bare branches were covered with a thin layer of snow, a vast expanse of white. The trees seemed to be welcoming a new life. My vision gradually blurred. I seemed to see Tessa. She stood in the snow, reaching out her hand to me. "Come on, Yara. Don't be afraid." I closed my eyes and found that I could truly accept death with a sense of calm. I had already made arrangements for my own funeral and had purchased a grave close to Tessa. The tombstone next to mine was just erected last year. The girl in the memorial photo has a round, egg-shaped face, and when she smiles, there's a small dimple on her left cheek, gentle and beautiful. The name engraved on the stone reads, "He Sway." Sway sway. It sounds lovely. I really like this new neighbor. Before my consciousness fades, I think that when I reach the underworld, I want to open a tattoo shop. First, I will tattoo a flower of the trumpet vine on Tessa, who has become a female ghost. Because the trumpet vine is very much like her.